Sometimes science is a real pain, especially when a scientist acts as their own test subject. While not the most common practice in the history of hypotheses, many scientists, including famous thinkers like Isaac Newton and Marie Curie, have stepped up and performed experiments on themselves. Some really have no choice, as their research is so cutting edge. Testing their ideas out on anyone else would be a huge breach of ethics. Others have volunteered for experiments for a variety of reasons: ego, humanitarianism, getting around protocol to get faster results. In the face of death, disease, and general discomfort, these intrepid scientists decided they would be their own best test subjects. While scientists subjecting themselves to their own experiments doesn't always earn respect, sometimes it does pay off. Some of the world's greatest discoveries have been made only after scientists decided to serve as their own guinea pig. From life-saving drugs to crazy acid trips, there's no end to what these researchers did to their bodies in the name of discovery. Don't try this at home.
Remember, don't try this at home, kids. I am a professional.
Instead, keep watching to learn all about the 13 crazy scientists who used themselves as test subjects. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for your daily dose of oddball facts. John Stapp broke numerous bones to study G-forces. John Stapp was dubbed the fastest man alive because of his bone-breaking, literally, experiments measuring G-forces on the human body. Stapp was an Air Force officer and surgeon who studied the human body's ability to withstand abrupt deceleration from extremely fast velocities. He used to strap himself into a rocket sled, shoot himself forward at close to the speed of sound, then brake suddenly. He suffered multiple broken bones and a temporarily detached retina thanks to these violent experiments. He eventually learned that the human body can withstand 45 Gs of acceleration. Herbert Woolard and E.A. Carmichael put weights on their testicles. In an attempt to study referring pain, Herbert Woolard and E.A. Carmichael did something that hurts just thinking about. They put weights on their testicles and measured where else they felt pain in their bodies. Referring pain is a phenomenon that occurs when one part of the body, usually an internal organ, produces pain in another, uninjured body part. In 1933, the two London-based doctors tried to figure out what causes referring pain. One would apply weights to the testicles of the other, who was lying spread eagle on the table. The person who received the weights, they never said which of them it was, would describe where in his body he felt pain and how intense it was. Marie and Pierre Curie suffered for their research and their Nobel Prize. The radiation discoveries that Marie Curie made and the research she dedicated her life to were the very things that eventually killed her. Marie and her husband, Pierre Curie, developed the theory of radioactivity and discovered polonium and radium. The couple won the 1903 Nobel Prize in Physics for their work on radiation. They both also voluntarily exposed themselves to radium burns during the course of their research. Pierre died in a street accident in 1906, while Marie died in 1936 from aplastic anemia, a condition she contracted after her long-term radiation exposure. It's theorized that had Pierre not died in a tragic accident, that his health would have also declined as a result of radiation exposure. Isaac Newton stuck a needle in his eye. Isaac Newton voluntarily stuck a needle in his eye in the name of science. The experiment was designed to test optics and color perception. He thought if he slid a long needle behind his eyeball, between the eye and the eye socket, and started poking, his vision would change. And it did. He noticed that he saw different perceptions of color and light as small, colorful dots that appeared when he applied a bit of pressure. He also took meticulous notes with his free hand as he performed the experiment, which again involved sticking a needle behind his own eye. Barry Marshall gave himself a stomach disease and won the Nobel Prize. People used to think that gastritis and its stomach ulcers were caused by too much stress. Dr. Barry Marshall had a different hypothesis. The bacterium Helicobacter pylori was responsible. He felt as though he was the only patient informed enough on the theory to consent to an experiment. So he swallowed a dose of H. pylori without telling his wife or the hospital ethics committee. And his gamble paid off. Big time. After 10 days, a biopsy showed he had developed gastritis. Several more years of work on the condition earned him the 2005 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Stubbins Firth bathed in vomit to prove yellow fever wasn't contagious. Dr. Stubbins Firth went to extreme, unusual, and often disgusting lengths to prove his theory that yellow fever wasn't contagious. After the yellow fever epidemic of 1793, Firth began an experiment where he poured fresh vomit from yellow fever patients into open sores, wiped it into his eyes, and even bathed in it to prove it did not transfer the disease. His theory was only slightly correct, despite his questionable and stomach-churning tests. About 50 years after Firth's findings, other researchers discovered yellow fever is transferred through an exchange of blood, usually spread by mosquitoes. Ralph Steinman won a Nobel Prize for fighting his own cancer. When immunologist and biologist Ralph Steinman was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2007, he turned this tragedy into an opportunity. He believed that certain types of cells called dendritic cells had the potential to fight his tumor and designed immunotherapies for himself that he believed would help him and the rest of the world. Manipulating dendritic cells can help doctors and researchers design treatments that target camouflaged cancer cells that otherwise go unnoticed by the body. Doctors originally told Steinman that he'd only live for a year, but he survived for more than 4, remaining active and healthy during much of that time. His discovery won him the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2011. Unfortunately, he died 3 days before he received the award, becoming one of the few people to win it posthumously. David Pritchard studied autoimmune function by giving himself hookworm. After studying natives of New Guinea, University of Nottingham researcher David Pritchard had an idea. The natives suffered from a widespread hookworm infection, but at the same time had virtually no autoimmune disorders. Could the parasitic hookworms modify the human immune system in helpful ways, he wondered? In 2004, Pritchard put his hypothesis to the test, infecting himself with 50 hookworms.
Are you serious?
He would later discover the magic number was actually 10. His hypothesis was correct, and now scientists study hookworms as a potential treatment for a range of autoimmune disorders. JBS Haldane tested nitrogen narcosis and could blow smoke through his ear. A renowned polymath and one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century, JBS Haldane often experimented on himself. One of his most famous series of tests involved the effects of pressure and different kinds of gases experienced by submariners and other underwater workers. Using his own decompression chamber, Haldane regularly exposed himself to potentially lethal doses of oxygen and dangerously rapid rates of decompression. While studying nitrogen narcosis, he suffered from burst eardrums, but took a humorous attitude about it, saying, "The drum generally heals up, and if a hole remains in it, although one is somewhat deaf, one can blow tobacco smoke out of the ear in question, which is a social accomplishment." Jonas Salk tested the polio vaccine on himself, then gave it to the world for free. When it came time to test his polio vaccine, Dr. Jonas Salk decided the only suitable test subject was himself and his family. In 1947, Salk was working on a vaccine for the crippling disease at the University of Pittsburgh. He needed a healthy volunteer to test it and administered it to himself, his wife, and their 3 sons. It worked and was soon implemented in a nationwide test that showed dramatic results. In 2 years, cases of polio decreased from 28,985 to 5,894. Salk didn't patent the vaccination and insisted that it remain free and available to everyone. As a result, he's often remembered as one of history's great humanitarians.
Nobody gets polio anymore.
John Hunter gave himself gonorrhea and syphilis. Most people try and avoid getting gonorrhea and syphilis, not John Hunter.
But did that stop me from getting gonorrhea?
The 18th century medical researcher believed the diseases were caused by the same pathogen, and that if a patient contracted one, they were bound to get the other. He injected himself with gonorrhea to test his theory and did actually contract syphilis, but not because they're the same disease. Unbeknownst to him, his patient had both syphilis and gonorrhea.
I got gonorrhea from my wife, who got it from a bus seat.
Some 50 years later, another researcher discovered Hunter's mistake. Jack Barnes stung himself with an obscure jellyfish species to solve a medical mystery. Most people do everything they can to avoid getting stung by jellyfish, but not Jack Barnes. The former Army commando and doctor became convinced in 1961 that jellyfish were to blame for a mysterious ailment affecting people living in northern Australia. The sickness, called the Irukandji syndrome, caused nausea, intense muscle pain, vomiting, and sometimes death. Barnes suspected it was caused by the sting of a small box jellyfish native to the area. He captured a specimen, stung himself, his son, and a local lifeguard. All three developed Irukandji. Barnes was hospitalized as a result of the sting, but had found the answer to his hypothesis. Now, people in Australia follow preventative measures to avoid those jellyfish and their nasty, disease-inducing stings.
There is no known anti-venom for the box jellyfish, which is present throughout coastal waters of Australia.
Humphrey Davy nearly died laughing. In 1799, the young chemist Humphrey Davy undertook a series of self-experiments in which he inhaled increasingly potent doses of nitrous oxide, better known as laughing gas.
Do I sound like I'm laughing, sweetheart?
He was known to lock himself in a chamber full of the gas and inhale it for hours, which nearly killed him. Davy recommended that the gas be used as an anesthetic. People scoffed at the idea, instead using it as a popular party favor at laughing gas parties, usually attended by the British upper class. It would take 40 years until doctors started using it for anesthesia.
All right, you'll be laughing there, right?
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. What's something you'd subject yourself to in the name of science? What would you do to make a scientific discovery? Comment below and tell us, then like this video and subscribe to our channel for your daily dose of oddball facts. See you soon.